Hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in to Talk with an Angel. I'm Angel McGinnis, host of the show. Our goal with this and future shows are to be informative and engaging on subjects and issues that are important to you as a modern-day teenager. We will cover topics such as drugs, alcohol, violence, and much more. Today's show, we are discussing the subject of sex trafficking. Our in-studio guests today are Alison Hall from P.A.A.R, Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, and Kelly Wesolosky from F.B.I. Let's give them a hand as we welcome them both to the show. Now, welcome to Talk with an Angel. Alison, why don't you tell us who you are and what P.A.A.R is and how this organization got started?
Oh, thank you, Angel. Alison Hall, Executive Director of Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, and P.A.A.R is one of the oldest rape crisis centers in the country, and we're an agency focused on the treatment and prevention of sexual violence.
And Kelly, tell us about who you are and what you do for the F.B.I.
My name is Kelly Wesolosky, and I'm the Community Outreach Specialist for the F.B.I. Pittsburgh Division, and I raise awareness on all F.B.I. related matters, including human trafficking, and I try to build community awareness on those topics.
And now, Kelly, my next couple of questions are for you. What exactly is sex trafficking?
Well, sex trafficking is the, encompassing all of human trafficking. A lot of people think of human trafficking, they'd immediately go to sex trafficking. Mm-hmm. We define human trafficking in three ways. Okay. There's sex trafficking, which is the force act of labor, be it commercial sex, and there's also labor trafficking, and there's also domestic servitude, which is more of your domestic worker in the home. So labor trafficking could be defined as, any kind of forced labor. Mm-hmm. We see that in industries as, low-paid industries that are very transient and things like that. So there could be some overlap in the different types of trafficking that we see on a federal level.
Okay.
But basically it's the force act of labor.
Of labor. Is there a difference between you kind of actually really explained this already, the difference between sex trafficking and human trafficking, which
mm-hmm.
you pretty much explained that
right.
We pretty much look at it as three different areas that you look mm-hmm. into. Now, who is actually doing the trafficking? Like, what is the main individuals that you see mm-hmm. participating in initiating this?
The difficult thing is a lot of this is hidden, and it's hard to put a demographic on things that are intentionally hidden. So when people ask how much is out there, I can honestly say that the people doing the trafficking, there's no, what we're finding is there's no specific demographic. A lot of this stuff is done online. It could be, the person with the criminal mind that's financially motivated, really. And so there's really no specific demographic that I can give you an answer for on that. It's everyone.
It's everyone. So mm-hmm. It can be any person walking. It could be someone that you're working with. It doesn't matter.
We've seen it all.
Oh. Now to Alison. Who are your typical victims of sex trafficking? Women, girls, or boys?
All of the above. But mostly what we have seen over the last few years are domestic victims. People tend to think of traffic victims mm-hmm. as strictly international. While that does happen, mm-hmm. Most often, at least in Allegheny County, in our area, it's domestic victims, ages anywhere from 14 to 21. And there's no socioeconomic, it's all over the spectrum.
So there's pretty much it can be anything.
Anyone.
Anything.
Just like a victim of sexual violence.
Now, how are the victims lured into sex trafficking? From your
generally, people at some point have been involved with the CYF system at some point in their lives. Could be runaways. abuse at home. So those are really the push factors as to why somebody seeks out someone. And then the pull factors are the attraction of that trafficker. That can be their boyfriend, a father figure, drugs, some sense of security, where initially that person, again, could leave home because they're being sexually abused or physically abused, and their trafficker initially does not do that. So it's a sense of security, can be drugs and alcohol, the independence to do what they want. And there's also material goods that go along with that. I mean, someone is taken care of and provided and has things they could potentially not afford before.
Kelly, what are some of the ways victims are trafficked?
Well, online, obviously.
Is that the biggest right now due to the whole technology?
Again, I'm not quite sure when someone asks me how much of it is out there. The reason why we do outreach is to raise more awareness, which therefore brings us more cases because there's more eyes and ears out there. So I can tell you what we're seeing right now is 80 to 90% in this Western PA area of our cases that are currently open are commercial sex trafficking cases. There's a lot of that stuff is done online. A lot of it could be labor scams, where someone is coerced to think that they're going to be a model, or they're going to sell magazines, or they're going to do something else, and then once they get involved, it baby steps its way into commercial sex trafficking. Also, for the international audience, there could be someone that we have a debt bondage situation. So and that would be the coercive type of sex trafficking. So if an international person is therefore brought into this country, there's a debt bondage situation similar to a blackmail type of situation where we're giving you food, we're giving you shelter, you owe us. Or we will hurt someone else, and then the threats come. So then there's an obligation there. So you're working with a bunch of different factors on how somebody can be coerced into commercial sex trafficking in a not so traditional way.
What about? I know I've seen signs. It'll say you're looking for work between these ages. Call this number. And actually, probably both of you can even speak to that. With these signs, usually, it's really not a job, because it's really kind of a form of getting more, I guess you could say, individuals for sex trafficking.
You always have to be cautious, and I'm never going to say that's not a real job, because you just have to be a little bit more cautious when you see a sign on the road or an ad on a specific website. You look for very seasonal type work, very, again, low labor, or manual labor intensive work. Those are the types of things that you look for a little bit more cautiously. And I would just say look into it a little bit more before, and just to be cognizant and aware that this could be a scam.
Now, who purchased trafficked victims, I guess you can say? Is it more so if they're seeing something online and I guess like an ad for the person, who's typically the type of person that would go and purchase these victims that you usually will see?
Well, it could be anyone that we don't really believe that people, the sex industry, people intentionally look for human trafficking because they're looking for, a commercial sex act. They're looking to purchase a commercial sex act. So, that could be honestly, anyone. But we really don't think they're looking specifically for, that. They're looking for the commodity.
And this is just a general question. In your experience, why do you think traffickers are trafficking victims?
Is it lucrative? Low risk, high reward, greed, money. And unfortunately, when you're looking at an individual, a human being as a commodity, from a business standpoint, the profit margin is higher on a human being than it is on an object, because a human being can be sold more than one time, unfortunately.
What is sex tourism?
Sex tourism is the intention to travel to purchase a commercial sex act, whether it be internationally or at domestically. We're seeing it at large-scale events, conferences, sporting events. I don't want to call out sporting events, but any event where you see people coming in and out in a short period of time, a large amount of people, whether it be, the Super Bowl or the Major League game or, a huge concert or whatever. People coming in and out of a certain area for a very short period of time. Or it could be internationally as well.
I never even heard of that before. Yeah. But what is the impact of sex trafficking on victims in society at large?
I mean, it's major trauma to them. I mean, these are individuals. I mean, there's a myriad of ways that they're affected. Usually, again, if it's not an act of total coercion where somebody is, forced to perform sex acts every night, or to have sex with strangers every night. It's a question of, trusting that boyfriend or trusting that father figure who then coerces them, or, if you really love me, this is what you're going to do. And, as Kelly talked about, there's also the threats to family and friends. So you have a lot of things going on. I mean, you have, again, forced to perform sex acts. You have the betrayal of somebody that they thought they loved and trusted, which is also one of the reasons, or the main reason, that it's hard to leave their trafficker. This is somebody, again, who's given them a skewed sense of security, but is taking care of all their needs, and there's a very strong, trauma bond with that person.
Basically Stockholm.
Yes.
And Kelly, well, we actually kind of touched on this, which I was just going to ask, where is sex trafficking really occurring? And it's pretty much a lot online, and all over. As you already explained, that it's out there and it's everywhere. Now, is it a major problem for Greater Pittsburgh? Do you see it a lot more here, or is it just all over the board as far as
we see
percentage?
it a lot here. Again, I don't want to say, again, I'll go back to my answer. It's hard to quantify something that's intentionally hidden. So, does it exist? The more, and I commend you all for doing more outreach on this, because as a result of this, hopefully we'll have a ripple effect and more cases will be generated. But yes, we do work with our international partners, our local partners, because a lot of this stuff is very it crosses all borders, and so to kind of limit it to a certain area, I mean, you can have a case that started here that ends up somewhere else, maybe in another country or whatever. So I think we should probably look at it more of as a whole, a society as a whole, rather than regional.
And just for both of you, I just have a question on, because you both mentioned outreach. Do you guys go into any of the schools and give any type of presentations, just to kind of give more feedback, just to let the kids know that this is out there? So do you do any of that, or?
We do. Quite truthfully, victims don't recognize themselves as victims, so I think it's really incumbent on adults and those people that work with youth, whether it be youth placement, CYF workers, police, guidance counselors, nurses, to really understand what a victim can, what they experience, what victims look like. You can't really ask somebody, are you a victim? And rarely are they going to say yes. So it's really learning how to finesse conversations, aware that this happens, what signs to look for, and how to really help that victim. I mean, it's a very lonely place for victims, sexual violence victims. I mean, really, it's taken 40 years for people to really start talking about this issue, let alone, this not so new layer, but victims of sex trafficking. And P.A.A.R is really proud to work with the F.B.I. The F.B.I has been, incredible as far as outreach and reaching out into the community, because none of us can work to end this or help anybody, in isolation.
So we train, law enforcement on what to look at on the federal level, and we have a really great group of law enforcement partners that we work with together on this, and that we've opened cases with together. We also work with the medical community and emergency rooms, nurses, on what to look for if someone comes into the emergency room, and if they're just looking for some kind of a cheap, quick fix to their trauma, and what to look for there. There's all types of industries that we partner with. P.A.A.R is one of our best partners as well. CYF, any industry where any of the vulnerable could be identified and rescued, we will partner with.
And actually, just with looking at some of these questions, I'm like, oh, we already have really touched a lot of this. So I will ask Kelly, what is the Trafficking Victims Protection Act of 2000?
Okay, it is a tool that we use to enable a victim of human trafficking to that provide services to a victim of human trafficking. I do want to note we have that's one of the tools. If they're an international victim that was brought over here and they're deemed a victim, they are eligible to stay, if they cooperate with the investigation, they're eligible to stay in the country through a T visa, what we call a T visa. Okay. So a lot of, it's just a nice tool that we have in order to be able to rescue the victim and to identify the perpetrator and prosecute the perpetrator, because that's really our main focus. And a lot of times victims don't believe that they're victims, obviously, and they're told to be wary of law enforcement. And we really want to get that information out there, that we will, we have victim witness specialists that are full-time, not gun-carrying law enforcement officers that focus on the emotional and the physical trauma of the victims. They will come in, they'll interview the victim. What do you need from, an immediate standpoint, and what do you need from a long-term standpoint emotionally? So we have 3 full-time victim witness specialists that help do these interviews, obtain housing and food for the victim immediately, and provide those resources, the community resources, to be able to help the victim.
That is good to know that it's not just for here, but it also help international victims as well. That's really good to know. And I'll just have one more question before we go to our commercial break. Well, we kind of answered this as to why they don't leave their traffickers, is because they feel at home with them. They're it's sad.
And the fear.
Yeah, and the fear.
And the fear of, after, kind of they realize what's happening, there's also the fear that sets in as well. And the other thing is where, they've been potentially estranged from their family. Where would they go? They don't really have a support network. So as Kelly talked about, some of the needs of victims are, to sustain independence and to have, live in a safe environment. You also want to help them form a support network, a healthy support network that is separate from their trafficker and those individuals that they may have associated with when they were being trafficked.
Yeah. When we come back, we will find out what life is like for a survivor of trafficking. We'll be right back after these important messages. Talk with an Angel show. You can help me impact the world through your generosity by becoming an Angel partner. We'll be able to extend our reach together to further the gospel of Jesus Christ. As an expression of my gratitude for your monthly online donation of $25 or more, I will send you my Angel Pack, which includes a backpack, mug, and a t-shirt. Thank you in advance for responding quickly and generously. God bless you and your family. Become an Angel partner today. Just go to our website and click on the donation link right now to receive your free gift pack.
American Idols, chasing the American dream. Have you found what you're looking for? A lot of things in life seem important. Job, success, money. We call them American Idols because they promise fulfillment but leave us empty. That's why more and more people are realizing that success in their spiritual lives is essential. From it flows success to all other areas of life. And at New Vision Community Church, we're about helping you get more out of life. Join us this Sunday at 11 a.m. You might find what you're looking for. Join us here at New Vision Community Church on Sunday, October 29th at 4 p.m. as we celebrate 11 years of God's wonderful blessings. There will be great music, an inspiring word of God, and good food. Hope to see you there.
A little teleprompter. Welcome back to Talk with an Angel. I'm your host, Angel McGinnis, and our special guests today are Alison Hall from P.A.A.R, Pittsburgh Action Against Rape, and Kelly Wesolosky from the F.B.I. Alison, so before the break, I wanted to ask what life is like for a survivor of sex trafficking. Can you kind of elaborate on that?
I think it varies for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it depends on, the length of time individuals were trafficked. Some try to go back to their lives as if nothing happened.
Mm-hmm.
I can tell you that even a victim of sexual assault, that's difficult. Most individuals don't want to deal with it. They really want, the abuse to stop and life to continue. And unfortunately, there's all kind of coping skills and unhealthy coping skills that can potentially develop. High incidences of alcohol, drug abuse, potential eating disorders, those kinds of things. But the great news is that there's intervention, there's help for them. As Kelly talked about, the needs of victims, and there's a lot of really intensive needs in this population in case management. And, when you leave a trafficker and you've never really lived independently and that person's been everything to you, it's almost, it's dealing with the trauma of having somebody that you cared about traffic you, having, sex with strangers every evening, the reason they potentially left their home originally, and the fact that they have nowhere to live and a lot of life needs. Mm-hmm. So it's a lot for anyone to handle, let alone, youth today.
Now I'm going to ask both of you some questions that were submitted from our audience. So, you can tag team the questions. It's all up to you. We'll play that. People have said that trafficking is modern day slavery. Why is that?
Well, the short and the long answer is it's being forced to perform an act of labor that you don't want to do or unwillingly. So that's the short definition of why.
Yeah. Pretty much explains the reason why it's considered. Is it true for most exploited children their trafficking situation is not the greatest trauma they endured?
Possibly.
Mm-hmm.
Again, some of the reasons that people, flee their homes or run away is because they are being sexually abused at home or physically abused at home. But again, I mean, it's really how each individual looks at what their worst trauma is.
Why do most kids engaged in sex trafficking don't consider themselves victims?
I think because they don't understand what human trafficking is.
Mm-hmm.
They're just coming into their own. And, a lot of times you have that P.A.A.R feeling that, she talked about as, this is their definition of love. This is, this individual is providing me with food, shelter, my immediate needs, and he loves me, and that we're in a relationship. And so then you have that competing against, why they left their home in the first place, like she said. So, there's a lot of manipulation and grooming going on over a long period of time. Not necessarily just the P.A.A.R complex, but it's just very complicated to define.
Yeah.
So.
How does the criminal justice system typically treat trafficking victims and their perpetrators?
Well, I talked about our victim witness specialist. We immediately come in, and there are, certified counselors. They identify their physical needs, their psychological needs. They immediately provide them, and try to desensitize the situation. And obviously, offenders, we treat them as criminals.
Yes.
So,
as they should. Are there online websites, which I'm pretty much, I know the answer to this, but are there online websites that promote trafficking? And if so, what can we do to stop them?
There are some online websites that promote trafficking, also have, other legitimate uses. So, unfortunately, we have to work with those websites and where they're hosted and the jurisdictions where they're hosted. Sometimes it's internationally, sometimes it's domestically, in order to prosecute offenders and find victims. So, that's a complicated question, but that's what we do.
Yeah, because it is so hidden that it's hard, because some of it might actually be a legit website.
Exactly.
And some may not, so it's kind of hard to figure out exactly what it is. So I'm sure it's very difficult and a lot of data mining and looking through to see what is.
A lot of websites sell other things, and then there's another section. So, we do cooperate with those, the administrators of those websites.
And then I have just a couple more. This one's actually for you, Kelly. What is the F.B.I. doing? And we kind of already discussed it, but, just kind of reiterate. What is the F.B.I. doing to combat the problem of trafficking? Which is a lot of outreach.
A lot of outreach. We do have there is a Western PA Human Trafficking Coalition that is extremely vital in our efforts for outreach. And, P.A.A.R is one of our main partners. We partner, like I said, with law enforcement, with the medical community, with guidance counselors, with people on the front lines that might be able to identify a victim and rescue that victim. And then also we have community events such as this one, advocacy groups, and telling people, how to report it, what to look for, etc.
And speaking of that, and both of you can probably actually answer this question too. What is something that just a normal citizen is not, that are kind of out there? What can we do or notice, or the signs that we can pick up on and say, maybe something looks off? Like if we're out at a store and we might just get a feeling like, okay, this girl looks like she wants to get away but is scared. And you can tell like the guy that she's with, he looks a little suspect. So what is something that we can pick up on, just as a real normal day of just walking around and just being out there?
Well, I think it's very important to note that people that are being trafficked, please do not approach that person. Please call the law enforcement authority. There's a National Human Trafficking Victims Hotline that I have the number here for. But it's very important not to approach someone that you believe is a human trafficking victim, because they, number one, may not believe they're a victim, and then they may be punished for exposing themselves by, their trafficker might have thought that they've done something to expose the trafficking, and then therefore as a result they're going to be punished once they get into a place where that can happen. So it's just very important not to approach the person, not to try to rescue somebody on your own. Call someone and call the national hotline, and we will take it from there. But I do want to focus on that. Please call us. I'm going to tell the number right now. It's 888-3737-888.
And we'll also have the links posted with all the information after the show too, just so that everyone will have it. And I have another question for Alison. How does P.A.R help trafficking victims? We already kind of talked about it, but you could just kind of elaborate.
Well, actually, we have a new initiative that it's really Allegheny County's intervention for youth victims. We are opening a drop-in center beginning in November in Southside for victims to come on a daily basis. And I know the F.B.I. is very looking forward to that, to potentially have their victims come. It's obviously a no judgment zone. It's intensive case management, helping you get connected to any medical professionals that you need, dental professionals, a place where you can come and shower, a place where you can get some meals, and also learn some life skills if that's what you choose, to meet other individuals and to kind of work on whatever it is that they want to work on, knowing that success in that aspect is if that victim shows up another day.
And this is November.
This will start in November, yes. Okay. We're not really going to publicize the address, but if someone came to P.A.R, someone called P.A.R, we would obviously tell you where that is. And all of again, working on what their needs are, short-term and potentially long-term, and it's a way to help an individual sustain independence in a safe way from their trafficker and ultimately be able to live on their own.
That's really a great initiative, and the fact that that'll be open for them. That's amazing. Now, how can parents help their teenagers understand the gravity of trafficking, and are there programs to help the parents as well?
Well,
you can tag team
yes.
if you want.
You can always. There's actually a video called Taken that parents can download. There's a lot of, the Department of Health and Human Services has a Blue campaign that parents can go on, and they can educate themselves as well as their children on the topic of human trafficking. Obviously, FBI.gov has a human trafficking section, but our focus is mostly on finding the offenders and rescuing the victims. In terms of outreach, I would encourage parents to educate themselves. And then, provide come up with an appropriate strategy on how to educate your children on how to, be aware of that.
I mean, they're definitely the front line right there.
Right. And obviously, P.A.R has served and helped parents of victims of sexual violence. They too can receive therapy at P.A.R as would a parent of a trafficking victim.
That's good to know as well, because parents are affected as well when you find their child.
Sexual violence doesn't happen in a vacuum, and obviously this is a form of that. So we do provide services for the entire family.
That's good. And then all that information is also located on the website as well. Now, for both of you, what final words would both of you like to leave us with today?
That if you are in a situation where you're being sexually abused, potentially trafficked, that you're not alone, that you can call Pittsburgh Action Against Rape 24/7, and someone will help you get connected to law enforcement services if that's the path that you choose, or someone will connect you to any kind of need that you have. There's also P.A.A.R's site, which is a national website and a hotline that you can call as well, and reach out to the F.B.I. That, I guess the biggest thing is that you're not alone. A lot of these individuals have had barter sex for shelter. You're not going to be prosecuted for that. You've done nothing wrong. So please reach out. There's help for you.
Thank you so much, Alison.
I'm going to echo that. We have services. Law enforcement is a victim-centric approach. If you contact us and you're being trafficked, we are set up in order to provide you immediate services. We have a lot of partners. If you see something, say something, not to the potential victim, but to law enforcement. Call the number 888-3737-888. So that's a little easy to remember, 888-3737-888. And call, and that's a 24-hour national hotline. Again, any other information that you might need to push out to your communities, call the F.B.I. We're here 24 hours a day for you. So
thank you so much, Kelly. Let us thank Alison and Kelly for carving out some time from their busy schedules to discuss this important issue. Let's have a round of applause. Thank you. You can check out my Facebook page for a listing of where to get help. And if you would like to be a part of our live studio audience, join us next month on Saturday, November 4th at 11 a.m. for our live broadcast. You can always go to my church website for more information on this show or see a replay on our YouTube channel. And don't forget to like and follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. This has been Talk with an Angel with yours truly, Angel McGinnis, and I'll see you next time.